but I guarantee you everybody has experienced the spinning wheel of death. All of these things are because of heat. So it's the first different material in about 100 years. You kind of know the president's about to come because you start seeing all these guys that look like linebackers in suits that start slowly creeping into the room. I would tell them to fail more. I failed a lot to get to where I am. In order to close the seed round, I basically had to go to the co-lead investor's house on a Sunday and go for a 1-hour walk with him around his neighborhood.
Hello everyone, your host Dan Kihanya here. Thanks so much for listening in. You just heard our guest for this episode, Bara Cola from Carbice. He's bringing us a startup with some real hard science. Stay tuned. Our episode today is sponsored by the Washington Technology Industry Association, or the WTIA. As always, if you're excited about what we're doing, please go and subscribe wherever you find your podcasts. We're on Apple, Google, Spotify, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. And please follow us on Twitter at FoundersUnfound, or go to our website, foundersunfound.com, and sign up for our updates. And finally, we just recently launched a swag store with The Loyalist. So if you're up for a Founders Unfound t-shirt or coffee mug, just hit the store link on our site. Now, on with the show. Hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to Founders Unfound, spotlighting the best startups that you don't know yet. We bring you stories of exceptional founders from underrepresented backgrounds. This is episode 4 in our series on founders of African descent. It's August 2019, and I'm your host, Dan Kihanya. Let's get on it. Today we have Bara Cola, founder and CEO of Carbice, a startup that is revolutionizing the new standard for thermal cooling in the global electronics market. Welcome, Bara, and thanks for making the time.
Thank you, Dan. It's a pleasure to be here, and look forward to having a conversation with you.
All right, excellent. So I'm super excited because you're my first interview with somebody who's actually doing science and innovations and inventions. So let's get started by maybe just talking a little bit about what exactly is Carbice.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned science because, for people that know a lot about a science or they know a little bit, people tend to know something about entropy and the basics of thermodynamics. So what I tell people is that everything in the universe that is alive or does work produces heat. And for some things, it could be a good thing. For some things, it's not that important. But for a lot of things, managing that heat is one of the most critical things for proper function of the system. That includes the human body. Carbice in particular, in setting the new standard of thermal materials, is a company that's formed to address the overheating problem in electronics. I mean, we clearly live in a digital world today, a world where we have internet and cell phones everywhere on Earth and in space now and in the future. So Carbice is really here to help those people that make these products and make your Slack and your Google possible with the back-end servers and chips to really help make those things more efficient and help manage that heat problem.
That makes sense. Definitely. Although I have to say, I think most people would pick up their cell phone and say, I don't feel anything. It's not hot. What is he talking about?
Yeah, if you're an Uber driver or Lyft driver, if you talk to them, most of them are plugging their phone in, running their GPS while they're driving you around, and they have a lot of problems with heat. So in that case, it's kind of a limited use case. But in general, the cell phones are designed primarily for heat dissipation. So there's a lot of smart people that spend a lot of time making that happen so that you don't have your hands burned. And the way they do that is with advanced materials. It could be graphite in an iPhone, or what they call a heat pipe, which is a liquid to vapor heat transfer system inside of a Samsung phone. And so all of these systems are making tremendous compromises in terms of price and ability to deliver those products effectively to the market. So, Carbice helps to make that process simpler, more cost effective, and speeds the innovation cycle. So people may not feel the heat on their phones. They may not feel the heat in the servers, but I guarantee you everybody has experienced the spinning wheel of death
Right.
on a Mac computer,
Right.
or they've experienced some sort of slowdown in their ability to process on their phone, or they're gaming and the game freezes. All of these things are because of heat.
Because the heat basically, there's some sort of a governor or something with chips so that they don't, have a Samsung uh, issue where well, that was a different issue, but where they don't fail. So they protect themselves, and that results in you seeing it as, like you said, the spinning wheel of death or a performance issue.
Yeah, I mean it's a hard science problem to solve the heat problem because it's so fundamental and it requires materials, and everybody that's been solving that problem has been using the same set of materials for years. So it was really 15 years ago that companies like Intel started to realize that we can no longer just let the chip operate in an uncontrolled manner. So they put thermocouples built into the device to make it turn off when it gets too hot. So most chips that you use in your phone and your computer don't operate at full capacity. So there's so much potential and value that can be unlocked by having better thermal management. And that's really where Carbice comes in, because we are a science company and we have invented a new material class that is different. So it's the first different material in about 100 years that can actually improve the heat dissipation capacity by, not just incrementally, but by an order of magnitude. And so that's really where the platform exists, because the chips are already more powerful than what we utilize on a daily basis. But the way that the industry has managed that is really just by derating or reducing performance. And Carbice comes in and we help unlock that potential.
Did you say 100 years?
Yeah, I mean, synthetic graphite in the 1890s was really the last new thermal material, because copper existed before that, aluminum existed before that. Polymers came along in the early 20th century, but really polymers are made functional by just adding materials like silver, copper, aluminum, or alumina that are known. And everybody does the same thing. I mean, there are really only four basic categories of thermal materials that are out there. They're the metals, they're the graphite materials, there are liquid and polymer materials. And like I said, they're all doing the same thing and they make incremental improvements. But what everyone's been looking for in the science community for almost 30 years is kind of a quantum leap in performance that only a new material could enable.
I love that you're tackling a problem that's pretty old. My business school professor told me one time that if you want to start a business in high tech, just go to the phone book and look for a company that says it's been in business for 100 years and then go reinvent what they do.
That's a good one. I like that a lot. If it's been around that long, it's solving a problem, it's probably there to stay. So
So, how long did it take? I mean, I think you've been involved in big research and development. You're a professor. You've got a PhD. So, how long did it take to get this technology to a place where you could commercialize it? Months, years?
years, really at this point, approaching decades. I mean, for me, I first got my interest in thermal materials back in 1999. And, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it, but it seemed pretty cool and like it would be important to come up with better thermal materials in the future. I did a lot of things in my background. I mean, when I was an undergrad, I was a football player at college and did a lot of different activities. But I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. And what I wanted to do was to build something that would last. And so when I went to do a PhD in 2005, I focused on this material. What we do at Carbice today is really the second generation or the second wave of carbon nanotubes, which is the material technology. So I was working with people who were much further ahead in thought than I was at the time, who had already started companies doing similar things and learned that the market wasn't quite ready for this type of new material. And so to get to your question about how long it took, it's really taken a community. It's not really just a me or a Carbice thing. It's really a community of learning about how to do the proper type of problem finding and go to market with this technology. So I started working in earnest in 2005. And so now it's 14 years later. In that process, I became a professor. did a lot of research to solve some of the hard problems, started Carbice. We were in a research phase for 5 years before people knew about us, just operating off of government grants and doing hundreds of thousands of experiments to get our process and our technology where it is today. And so, just for the past 2 years, when we've been in our commercial mode, people see us as new and fresh and we're out there doing things. But I guess the saying goes, every overnight success takes 10 years. That's absolutely true for us.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It's actually pretty refreshing to talk with somebody who has this vision and perseverance. If you get into Silicon Valley, it's sort of spend 3 months, and if the customer doesn't bite, then move on to the next thing. And it's more about deploying technology than necessarily reinventing it or inventing it, I should say. So, I mean, that's a long journey to get to a point where you're actually able to get the commercialization phase going. But that's exciting. That's exciting. I mean, how does it feel to invent something that didn't exist before?
I mean, it's cool, but I do think that in order to stay kind of in this and focus for as long as I've stayed, the goal has to be bigger than that. It has to be bigger than just inventing something cool. And I think to your point about Silicon Valley, you kind of like you stay in 3 months, you see if you get customer traction, you move on. A lot of times those things aren't things that are so vital to the progression of humanity. I think people get excited about electric vehicles and renewable energy and these things that are so directly translatable and understand they can understand. I plug something in, I get power and it came from the sun. But all those technologies are enabled by better thermal management and they use something today, but things can be several factors or even order of magnitude better, in terms of output and lower costs, which means more people can access it. So those are the things that drive me. If you go back and actually look at the intro to my PhD dissertation, which nobody in their right mind would, people just don't read those things. I was, when I graduated, I said my advisor, my committee, and my mother might take a look at this. That's it. Um,
I'll read it.
but if you go back and look at it, I actually highlight in the intro the continent of Africa and how at the time of the writing, there were more people with cell phones than landlines, right? And if you think about why that's possible, I can make an argument that better thermal management has made that possible. Just like when you think about internet, you think about companies like SpaceX, OneWeb, and now Amazon that want to provide satellite internet from space. There are many places that have no wired internet. They have no lines, they have no infrastructure. But when you enable a breakthrough in technology like that, which frankly is enabled by materials like Carbice, by better thermal management, you expand the access to things to people that could never reach it before. And it's revolutionary. You think about the Arab Spring and how social media drove a lot of that. Whether whatever your own, whatever your politics or whatever you want to happen or see in the world, it's indisputable that providing these technologies to people opens up freedom, and that's the big mission. I mean, I think that that's for me. I understood that I had a certain skill set, and I understood that I had a certain ability, and if I could apply that within this framework of making people's lives better and providing a world where people could live freer, I'm game for that. And so I dug in, and the carbon nanotube became one thing. So I think it's cool. I do like the tech. I'm a nerd in that sense, but I never lose sight of the bigger vision because I think that that's what allows me to work how I work.
That's great. That's exactly what I know investors want to see in their entrepreneur portfolio companies. That drive that is, how do I find solutions that change the world, and what are the problems that need to be changed or addressed? What are those challenges, as opposed to being in a lab all the time necessarily how things are done. So that's pretty cool. That's the perspectives that you carry into your business. What can you tell us? So you've been commercializing for a couple of years now, or in the commercial zone. What can you tell us, if I'm an investor sitting on the other side of the table? Where's the company at right now in terms of sales, employees, progress? Anything you want to share on that front?
Everything's exciting. I mean, for us, we wait a long time. Our markets are long sales cycles. I mean, if you're going to put a new material technology in a car or on a spaceship or satellite, they're going to qualify the heck out of it. They're going to go through all type of reliability tests. And so we've been in 2-year sales cycles since we raised our seed round. And our milestones really were to exit these qualifications successfully and to build out capacity at the same time to deliver. And we've done that. I mean, we've improved our ability to deliver by 30x. We just exited a qualification with one of the largest US aerospace primes. We are rolled out into full production in the semiconductor test market with one of the leading LED companies in the world. So we've done all these things that we said we were going to do, which is very satisfying and empowering to the team. And we know the technology works, Dan. I think that's the most important thing, is that we're not talking about technology and materials anymore. We're talking about solutions, and they're proven.
Right. And I think, like I said, the patience and perseverance to get to that point is more than remarkable. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few moments with Bara Cola from Carbice. We are honored to welcome our second support sponsor, the Washington Technology Industry Association. The WTIA offers startups in my home state a bunch of resources, from insurance to investor connections. We will continue this episode after a brief word from the WTIA.
Washington Technology Industry Association, or WTIA, is a nonprofit that supports tech companies in Washington state, which is home to one of the most innovative tech ecosystems in the world. With enterprise companies like Microsoft and Amazon headquartered here, and engineering offices for Facebook, Google, and others, we have some of the best technical talent in the world. We're also home to many successful startups, including unicorns like Rover, Convoy, and OfferUp. WTIA provides resources and programs for companies of all sizes and stages headquartered in Washington or looking to expand here. For startups, we provide a variety of stage-appropriate resources like health insurance, business insurance, connections to resources like investors or service providers, workshops, and other support to help startups reach their potential. Go to www.washingtontechnology.org to learn more.
So before the break, Bara, we were talking about the progress you have as a company and the potential. And I guess let me take a shot at this, but I actually see this as the magnitude of this is unbelievable. I think that we are in a very connected world with chips and let's just call it electronic brains that are propagating it every part of our lives, whether it's Internet of Things, whether it's our transportation, communication, entertainment, education, it's everywhere, as you said. And heat is the enemy of performance. And so you're battling that enemy by basically hugging electronics in a way that you take the heat and leave them to thrive. Does that sum up what you're doing?
No, it's beautiful. You paint a beautiful picture.
Yeah.
It's a lot of love we have. Big hugs, warm
Yeah,
hugs.
yeah, it's that heat transfer,
Yeah.
and if you have what is it, a hypothermia, it's the opposite, right? The person with the heat is the provider who's trying to get the person warmed up. In your case, you're cooling those electronics down. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about fundraising. One of the things that we like to explore on the podcast is the experience as an underrepresented founder. What's been fundraising like? You talked about the fact that you had grants, which is an interesting process that we probably could go in another time. But in terms of raising money, I like to call it nothing ventured, nothing paid. There's usually some great anecdotes that are fun or surprising or positive, and then there's potentially some that are a little more challenging. So, anything you want to share about where you are in your fundraising journey, and then any stories you want to share about the process?
The process, I think, is a challenging process for everybody to raise money. We made a deliberate choice to build our company in Atlanta, Georgia. I have a lot of friends in the Silicon Valley and have consulted for companies, startups out there, and had investor connections. And I went out there before we raised any outside equity investment or capital, just to talk to people, get a sense. But we're going to build in Atlanta, and that's a different fundraising dynamic because outside of Silicon Valley, valuations and how people look at round size and things is different, to say the least. And so that's kind of one thing. I don't call it a barrier, but I just call it our choice. And so once we learned about our market, for me, the process of fundraising has really been one where I try to think about where I can go to get people excited about the things that I'm excited about. And I'm fortunate coming from the Georgia Tech ecosystem, and Carbice being a Georgia Tech spin out. I spend a lot of time focused on people who care a lot about Georgia Tech. And I guess my story is, it took me a year of talking to, frankly, the same people to get them to really come to understand what Carbice is going after. A lot of investors don't have an appetite for hard science companies. So you already kind of slice the market, trim it down by that. But what they do understand is that electronics aren't getting any bigger and less powerful. So they know the direction, right? And I think in order to close the seed round, I basically had to go to the co-lead investor's house and
Really?
on a Sunday and go for a 1 hour walk with him around his neighborhood, right? And just he's a tall guy. He's a tall guy with long legs too. So here I am. He's walking fast, and I'm just trying to keep up. And I'm just talking. I'm just telling them about what we're going after, what we're doing. And I think at the end of the day, which you touched on earlier, at the seed state, people are really investing in people,
Absolutely.
and
Yeah.
market potential. And I think he understood that the opportunity is tremendous, and that we had a pretty good team, and that we were going to work hard and not give up until we got the most out of it. And I think that that's ultimately how we were successful there.
So on this walk for an hour, were you getting cues from him? Was he keeping things close to the vest, or as the walk progressed, did you feel his energy levels, or you got to tell me how this walk went?
Did I wear him down or something?
Yeah, because obviously you closed at the end of the hour. Did you hold him hostage?
No trickery there. I think we just had an honest conversation. He's a pretty straightforward guy. I think that ultimately just kind of came down to the terms and kind of where we wanted to price things, and I think we landed in a fair spot. But yeah, there was no drama or nothing real. I have a lot of good stories I tell, but the fundraising stories really are kind of boring to some degree. Hour walks talking about heat and what we're doing. And so we're fortunate in that sense. But I've had a lot of interactions with a lot of investors, and the majority of them, just like a lot of people, they have their criticisms about, is it the right market, is it the right technology, things like that. I don't think people really have questioned the team. At the end of the day, we domain expertise in heat, there's no one better than us. We've been doing it for so long and understand it. But I think getting people to wrap their mind around what a material company is doing, where it's not so straightforward, like a battery material makes the car run longer, right? That's kind of easy to say. Well, a better thermal material, what does it do? Well, we had to kind of evolve that value proposition and understand that what we do is we make the solution integration simple, right? And so, that's not completely relatable without having long conversations with people. But once they get it, because like you were saying, you can see the scope of the Internet of Things and all these other connectivity things coming in line, and it's big.
Yeah, tremendous. This is the battle you face as every entrepreneur does. Is you're trying to change the world. You're trying to do things that's never been done before, and sometimes people get it. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they believe it. Sometimes they don't. And if the naysayers governed everything, we'd still be swinging clubs and hunting and gathering and so forth. So
that's right. I'm not sure we would have made it that far.
Exactly. That's a good point.
What are you doing picking up that big stick?
Good point. Good point. Um, so tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, I listened to your story collider, so I know a little bit about your football. I was a kind of a similar trajectory. When I went to college. I did pretty well in high school in football, and thought, okay, I'll just walk on the team, and I'm pretty good, and got my share of humbling when I played. But tell us about where you're from, and your full name is Baratunde, is that right?
Bartundi, yes, which
Baratunde, sorry, yeah.
it means kingly, and I tell people all the time my parents had high expectations for me,
There you
so
go.
I grew up in that shadow.
Yeah, my dad is from Kenya, and so my middle name is sort of, I'm the first son of the first son of the first son. So it's like, all right, whatever you're doing, you got to be doing 100%, and you're being
That's
watched.
right. That's
So,
right.
where are you from originally?
So I grew up in Pensacola, Florida. Was born in Detroit, but from the first grade up, my mother's hometown is Pensacola. Pensacola is an interesting place. My family goes way back there. It's Florida, but it's really lower Alabama.
Right.
The people who know it, they know what I'm talking about. That's where my family's from. It's a big military town, big sports town. So I started playing football when I was 8, and played all type of sports: baseball, football, basketball, track, weightlifting. But I always did things that were inventive too, and I've always been interested in technology. And I had this interesting upbringing because my father's from the Bronx, never left the city until he was 30, and then he decided he was going to leave the city and move to Pensacola, which is where he met my mother.
That is a interesting experience, because I'm from Boston originally. So I my impression of New York, and I've spent a lot of time in New York, is the people who love it, they stay and they never want to leave, and the people who don't like it, they leave and they never want to go back. So it sounds like your dad's kind of in the middle there. Pensacola is a bit different, I'm sure, than the Bronx.
It's different, but I think he was ready. I mean, he's an engineer, but he went to school late, graduated I think when he was 30, and I tell people he had a second life before that. I mean, he kind of grew up being a street entrepreneur, doing whatever, whether it's selling underwear in the housing projects or whatever he could do. And I think he just kind of, after he went to school and just wanted to do something different, left. But that Bronx was in my house my whole life
Sure.
because it never leaves someone. So I grew up with a grandfather that was very country and took me hunting, and everybody in the town knew him. He was very popular. He was in all the church we went to. He literally was one of the people who built the church. And then I got this street dad from New York. And so I kind of, it helped me kind of get a good sense of the world, I think, in my upbringing, because I had all these interesting characters around me at all times. I often, one of the stories I told at Vanderbilt to kind of explain to people, because when I went to Vanderbilt and I said I was from Florida, they all thought I was from Miami. And I had to explain to them that I'm from the Panhandle. And the way I explained it was that I had this neighbor, very fond of him. His name was Chris, who was dishonorably discharged from the
Oh
military
my.
for like striking his superior with a brick. And
Whoa.
he has had so many DUIs that his license was banned for life. So what he did is he had this riding lawnmower, and he would ride this lawnmower all over the place. And we'd wake up on a Saturday morning and Chris would be cutting our grass, what have you. And I'd see him at the Taco Bell down the street in the drive-through in the riding lawnmower. So I said, that's not
That's
Miami.
what's that movie, Forrest Gump, where he's driving the lawnmower in Greenbow, Alabama?
Yeah.
Oh my.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Right. So Chris is a white guy with red curly hair and freckles. And one of the classic pictures is that, I lived in this neighborhood. It was kind of a lower middle class neighborhood that had trailer parks here, had some projects here. And the liquor store was on the other side of the projects. And I just remember one time my cousins were visiting in the summer, and he had this little trailer he had just got for the back of his lawnmower. And he took us for a ride right through one of the seedy areas of this part of the neighborhood. And you had this guy with these little black kids on the back, and everybody was sitting on the corner doing the things they do on the corner, and they just froze and started looking at us. It's like, what is going on here? Here's a guy riding a lawnmower with these kids on the back coming through, and he and Dan, we didn't know the destination. The destination was the liquor store.
Oh
so,
boy.
so anyway, I got my point.
That could not happen today.
It absolutely can't happen today. But I got my point across at Vanderbilt that I'm not from Miami.
That story definitely clarifies things for sure. So you went to Vanderbilt, and I know you persevered through injuries, and you played football. And was it there that you sort of either reinforced or discovered your love for research and technology, or had you had it in you when you got there?
I mean, I don't know. I was planning on going to play NFL football. I mean, I was a pretty good football player, and I had a lot of confidence in my ability. And the injuries kind of derailed my life to a large degree, and so I never really had a strong passion to do research. I just kind of did it to fill the time at first. But I've always wanted to make a difference. I think the big idea type of thing, the mission, how I'm going to change the world. And when I saw that opportunity in research, that's really what fueled the passion for doing it. It was really more of a learning experience. Like, how am I going to go and do something? So I wanted to start a business even when I was an undergrad in college, and I had a landscaping business. When I finished football and grad school, I worked in real estate investment for a bit. I worked in politics for a bit. But what I started to realize then was that people like me, coming from my background, however you want to take that, it's very difficult to have a competitive business unless you have some way to differentiate your skill set so that you can attract capital. And so that was a strategy for me. Grad school was a strategy. I said, what I am good at is science and math and being inventive. So let me go and develop a skill, because I'm not going to be the best real estate investor because I just don't have access. And I did that. So I went to Purdue for a PhD, and I decided I'm going to be the best nanotechnology expert in the world. And, I couldn't predict where that would take me. But in 2017, I was at the White House getting $1 million as the top scientist and engineer in the country under the age of 35.
Yeah. And you got to meet President Obama, I think I read.
Yeah, I got to meet President. I went twice actually to DC. So once I got to meet President Obama, and the other time I got a letter from Trump.
I don't know. That sounds so tantalizing to unpack, but let's I want to hear more about Obama. Because
Okay.
I've been a fan of his for a long time, and in 2004 when he did the Democratic National Convention, we were I was with my family, my mom and my brothers, and we're watching this when we're on vacation. And he's up there speaking and talking about his background, and my mom's screaming at me, "You got to come see this guy! You got to come see him! He's you!" Because his dad came from Kenya about 4 years or so before my dad, so he's a little older than me. But I miss him. I miss him. So, what was it? Is he as charismatic and personable as he seems in person?
Oh, he's cool. We waited for him for about an hour in the White House, and you kind of know the president's about to come because you start seeing all these guys that look like linebackers in suits that start slowly creeping into the room.
Right.
And then here he comes. He just has that cool walk down the red carpet, and he's cool. I mean, he's everything that people say he is. He was, and it was nice to. He took time to shake everybody's hand individually, and not all the presidents do that. So it was really nice.
That's awesome. That's a great memory, and I'm sure your parents have been proud of you, and maybe they never questioned anything you did, but I'm sure that put a lot in the bank for you with your parents. You're like, hey, whatever I'm doing, maybe it doesn't seem like it's working, but I just met the president.
Yeah, no, I love my parents. They've been very supportive. I think that I'll make sure to bring them along with as much of that as possible. And they're very proud, and Yeah, it's been good. I think my dad is a very very smart guy, and I think that what he opened my eyes to in the world is that there are a lot of people in society that aren't in positions that we hold up to be smart or be famous and all these other things that have these skills. There are a lot of people who are just hanging out in the streets or maybe even in the prisons that have skills and it's not a unique thing to have skills or to be smart. That you have to figure out how to apply that and how to navigate the world to use it most effectively. And I learned these lessons from him and learned lessons of never giving up from my mother. And so whenever I have these moments, right, that's what I think about. I mean, it's really them that I did a lot of stuff just to kind of make them proud of me being able to do things that I knew that they might have wanted to do in their lives, but they lived in a different time.
That's a strong, strong, compelling sentiment, and I can identify with that. So we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a few moments with Bara Cola from Carbice. We are honored to welcome our second support sponsor, the Washington Technology Industry Association. The WTIA offers startups in my home state a bunch of resources, from insurance to investor connections. We will continue this episode after a brief word from the WTIA.
Washington Technology Industry Association, or WTIA, is a nonprofit that supports tech companies in Washington state, which is home to one of the most innovative tech ecosystems in the world. With enterprise companies like Microsoft and Amazon headquartered here, and engineering offices for Facebook, Google, and others, we have some of the best technical talent in the world. We're also home to many successful startups, including unicorns like Rover, Convoy, and OfferUp. WTIA provides resources and programs for companies of all sizes and stages headquartered in Washington or looking to expand here. For startups, we provide a variety of stage-appropriate resources like health insurance, business insurance, connections to resources like investors or service providers, workshops, and other support to help startups reach their potential. Go to www.washingtontechnology.org to learn more.
So we're back with Bara Cola from Carbice. So Bara, the big thing with startups is, it's a marathon at a sprint pace. And so some people can only hang for 5K or 10K or half marathon, and others say, I'm going to keep going. I'm tired. I'm cramping. I'm feeling like I'm moving in slow motion, but I'm going to keep going. And you certainly seem to have that muscle.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, Dan, for me, it's the point you're making. I find that the most important skill set is to really understand people in the world and how people interact with it. And it's that diverse experience of life that brings that. When I played football in college, I was considered relatively quiet among the personalities of guys that ultimately go and play in the NFL. And when I went to Purdue and get
I'm finding it hard to believe.
No, it's true. I mean, and when I went to get a PhD, I end up becoming the center of attention, right? So it's just like it's a different group of people.
Yeah.
Right. You got a lot of boisterous, just big personalities in a football locker room. And, for me, it's just different. Like you learn how to survive and be in different places and relate with people with different places. Everywhere I've been, I relate with people, but I know that they're different groups of people. And I think that's an important skill set. And I think that's, the driving force behind all of this for me is what am I doing for people, right? I'm not going to get too caught up in the technology because technologies change, but I'm going to take advantage of whatever opportunities that are there to change people's lives for the better. And that's just not just in the market or Carbice's customers or the customers of their customers, but it's the people within Carbice. It's part of it is I feel like if you're going to build a business to last and grow, you have to build internally too. And you got to be able to bring personalities together and think about the engineering problem at a system level of the people and the technology. And I enjoy that. I mean, I think that that's, to me, a very powerful motivator of doing what I do.
One question I've had on my mind when I was looking through your background, if you were entering the fictional Hall of Fame for legendary contributors to society, are you going in as a Commodore, a Boilermaker, or a Yellow Jacket?
That's a good question. Um, wow, that is a good question. I try to make it easy, Dan, by going to a school that had some sort of yellow or gold in the color. So how about I just go in as that color?
There you go. Very diplomatic. I like that. I like that. Very good. Um, Excellent. So tell me, you've had an interesting journey, and so far you've been pretty successful. But everybody has things they can look back on and say, maybe I should look at that a little different. Is there anything like if you were going to go back and talk to your 22-year-old self, let's say, preparing that 22-year-old self for the job you do today and the pursuits you have today, what would you tell that person?
I would tell them to fail more. I failed a lot to get to where I am. I've taken exponentially more risk as I get older to learn faster. And I think my younger self maybe was a little more structured and less risk taking. That's about it. Because I think that at the end of the day, I embrace mistakes and I try to move through them. I've had 11 surgeries, both knees, both shoulders, and my finger from sports, and I've spent I've spent at least a decade doing rehab. So adversity is not something that I'm going to let stop me, and I know how to deal with. And through that process, I've just learned so much that I can't ever have regrets about the mistakes and things that maybe I rushed or did. So it's just, I think that's the thing. I think that if anything, you don't have enough time in life to learn all the things that you would want to learn. But you want to learn all the things you need to learn to do the things you want to do. And the more you take chances, the faster you're going to get there.
Spoken like a true entrepreneur. Have you had any particular mentors or experiences, groups, organizations that have been particularly impactful, inspirational for you as a Black academic, Black professional, Black entrepreneur?
I'm a very focused and loyal person. I tell people I only applied to 3 colleges out of high school, and I know that's ridiculous for a lot of people. I only applied to Vanderbilt, Georgia Tech, and Michigan, and they all had yellow in their colors. But
Did your high school team have yellow?
no, they didn't. It was powder blue and red. I didn't like the colors,
Ah, there we
so
go.
but yellow's always been my favorite color. So the thing is, I kind of know what I want out of life to some degree, and I say that to your question. My freshman year advisor at Vanderbilt's a guy named Tim Fisher. He left and then went to Purdue, and I just followed him to get a PhD. I only applied to one school for a PhD
Wow.
because I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to go work with this guy. He's going to take care of me. I'm going to take care of him, and we're going to make something big happen. I'm very, he's been a fantastic mentor who's known me since I was 17. He's an advisor to Carbice. My parents, my father, my mother have been excellent mentors to me, and I lean on my father for help sometimes with things that we do at Carbice. I think that there's so many mentors that don't even know they're mentors to me, so many micro interactions that I leverage to better myself, that I can't list them all. But I think that, those people that I've listed are the ones that I took to Washington, D.C. with me when I won these big awards,
Right.
because they're people that have been with me for years and years. And on the business side, I'm fortunate. Georgia Tech has an ecosystem of people, catalysts, and mentors around us that are here to have a coffee with you and chat. And I take advantage of all that.
And have you been a part of the TechSquare Labs ecosystem as well?
Yeah, I mean, so our lead investors for the seed round are the TechSquare Labs, Paul Judge and Alan Nance are the principals there, and then the Georgia, the GRA Ventures, which is the Georgia Research Alliance Venture Fund, has all the big corporations in Georgia as the LP, and so we're heavily involved in that ecosystem. We're a member of ATDC, which is Georgia Tech's incubator. It's the oldest university technology incubator in the country. There's a lot of mentorship that comes out of that as well. And we, the company itself graduated through a program that had 3 levels to it that we started back in 2012. It's called the Georgia Ventures, or the GRA Ventures. and it's a kind of a grant making program, but it's also a mentorship program. And so we have everywhere. I'm a community builder.
I can believe that.
The city of Atlanta, Invest Atlanta, a guy I played football with worked at Invest Atlanta. He helped the previous mayor get elected. We build relationships there by exposing them to what Georgia Tech is doing for the first time in materials, and they're partners. They help us because of that. And that's really ultimately my goal, is to utilize all of these catalysts that are around us and try to be a benefit to them as well.
Awesome stuff. Well, this has been a tremendously enjoyable conversation, Bara. Is there anything you can tell us about how to reach you or how to find out more information about Carbice?
Sure, you can go to our website, carbice.com or carbicemagic.com. Feel free to reach out to me personally, bara.cola@carbice.com. We're on a mission. I mean, we're here to not only change the world from a digital or technological standpoint, but we have a tagline that says achieve more with Carbice, or achieve more with confidence. And that applies to individuals. And that's kind of the human push of this company, is that we want people to be empowered and be confident to be able to do more in their lives.
Great stuff. Thanks so much, Bara. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Nan. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. We'd like to thank our guest, Bara Cola, and our sponsor, the WTIA. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and follow us on Twitter @FoundersUnfound. This podcast was produced by me, Dan Quijano. Our music was composed by Bruce Zimmerman, Neil Cross, Keith Anthony Holden, Justin Wright, Neil Golden, Ken Hall, El Pagario, and Charlie Smith. I'm Dan Quijano, and you've been listening to Founders Unfound.